Okay, so usually when I take my vintage cars out to the track to go running them, I basically run them until I break them, because most of these vintage cars are rather fragile and they can't take the kind of beating that modern cars can have, with the exception of some of the YZ10s. Those are pretty tough. So that was pretty much the case with this NIX91. So I did install the iMaterialize rear arms on this car because I found the Shapeways ones to be quite easy to break. And I did manage to break an iMaterialize arm, although at a different spot than on the Shapeways part. The Shapeways arm I broke somewhere around here on the cross brace. On the iMaterialize part, I landed between the pipes. I just had a really bad takeoff on the jump. Landed between the pipes. Same kind of landing. It was sort of sideways. But it was a pretty hard landing, and it snapped the arm right around the spot where the hinge pin slots through. Okay, so having some more material around there would of course be nice. In any case, I do have a spare arm that I can mount here and take it back to the track hopefully soon. This is a Shapeways arm though, so this is a weaker arm. But I would say that the iMaterialized parts do appear to be a bit stronger. I mean, they're still 3D printed, so there is a limit to how strong they can actually be. But they are at least as good as the US Shapeways parts, and they are cheaper. A full set of iMaterialized front and rear arms is about $24, although the shipping is a little more expensive. A full set of front and rear arms from Shapeways is about $44 or so. It's about twice as much, almost. So I got to order some more rear arms. I'm actually quite surprised that I haven't broken yet any front arms, because these are still the Shapeways front arms and they haven't snapped yet. Although at the front, while I'm at it, I should point out that the part of the steering rack, this body post piece, it's also kind of a post that goes through the rack. This can strip out at the part where the screw that goes through the chassis screws into this post. I actually had that strip out over this past weekend, and I ended up tightening the screw down so much that I ended up snapping the screw. So I had to take that screw out, put another screw in, and you don't need to use a super long screw. You can just use a standard length RC10 screws there. These guys here, this is a standard length screw. I think this is a longer screw, perhaps. In any case, you could use a standard length screw. It's just fine. And then to fix the slop issue, I just put tire glue in there and quickly just, threaded it back in, and it seems to be holding okay. So that seemed to work. So back to this here. While I was running this car actually felt really good when I zeroed in on a reasonable setup. So I did a few things, and I'm going to go over some of the setup things that I did. So in the past, basically on the track that I run at, it can be a high grip track, which means that rear motor cars, especially this car with a really light front end, are going to struggle to get reasonable corner exit steering. So I made a few changes, like adding 2 millimeters of spacers under the steering link ball stud on the actual steering knuckle. This helps to level the arm out a little more. So when the car exits a turn and the suspension levels out, this is more level at full droop. So that way I get more steering throw. So that helps a little bit with corner exit steering. I also have, I think, 5.03 inch down travel limiters on the front shocks that limits weight transfer to the rear. I added right under the steering rack here across the chassis 3/4 of an ounce of lead weight, so that puts a little bit more weight up front. And if you use the right kind of lead weight there, it'll fit. I mean, there's good clearance. It doesn't hit the steering rack at all. So that helps a little bit. All these things help a little bit. There's no one thing that's really a magic bullet here for corner exit steering. And then on top of that, I also added a rear sway bar. Okay, so this is a custom setup here, right? And it's really simple to do. You take a B44 sway bar. I'm using a silver one here. Okay, and you just mount it right here between the shock tower and the bulkhead. You can also, if you want, mount it in front of the shock tower on these two holes and use the SC10 4x4 sway bar holders to hold it in place. That's actually what I do on my RC10 team car. Or you can mount it here, okay? And then you use a 2-inch turnbuckle, and then a standard ball cup at the top, and a shock end at the bottom, and just a standard screw there. And I screw into the inside hole. So there are 3 holes here on the arm. I use the inside hole to hold this in place, and it works fine. On this side, I had to remove the gear cover because that was getting in the way of this piece here. But you don't really need a gear cover. It's not a big deal. So over here, I'm just replacing the rear arm. A quick way, by the way, to replace these rear arms, if you do break them, is not to tear apart everything and pull the hinge pin out from the rear. Just take the rear battery cup out here, and then you can just take some pliers and pull the hinge pin out this way towards the front. This arm just slides right out, put a new one in, put the hinge pin in, and you're good to go. Okay, that'll save you a lot of trouble with surgery at the back. Other things I did for setup, I'm trying to increase the rear droop, so that way, for 2 reasons. First, so I get a little bit more forward weight transfer on braking to get more corner entry steering. So if I have more rear droop, the rear suspension will lift up more on hard braking. That'll give me more weight transfer to the front. The other reason I want more droop is for landings. If you build the shocks so that the shock end, the top of the shock end is flush with the end of the threads, like right here, even if you mount the shock to the inside hole, the arms are going to be maybe not quite flat, but almost flat. So what I did here is this, I'm actually going to try it for later. I haven't tried it yet on the track, but I just unscrewed the shock end by 4 full turns from this. I would call this fully locked, and I just back off by 4 full turns, and that gets me almost to a full droop here. So that should help me a lot with landing. So I'm just doing that on both shocks here. And that's where I am as far as setup is concerned. And I got to order more arms because I apparently am breaking more rear arms than front arms, which is interesting. And again, though, if you order these from iMaterialize, you have to actually order a full set. You can't just order the rear arms only. But maybe in time, you know, the guy that designs these will allow you to do just the rears or just the fronts from iMaterialize. We'll see. But it also, if he's watching, it would be nice to have maybe a little bit more material around here where the hinge pins slot through to keep them from breaking here. Okay, but otherwise the rest of the arm appears to be okay. All right. Yeah, so that's it for now, and thanks for watching.